this committee knows a lot about pre-K. I went ahead and made a PowerPoint anyway. Just
Only
sometimes.
some of us know a lot about pre-K.
Okay. Sometimes it's nice not to just look at the language and sort of understand it more conceptually. So we can go through this PowerPoint to the extent it's useful, and then we can flip over and look at the statute if you want to get more into the words.
I think that would be helpful. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So first, this has a link to the Universal Pre-K program in Title 16 that was enacted in 2014. As you know, the program requires all school districts to provide access to publicly funded pre-K services for not fewer than 10 hours a week for 35 weeks of the year to children who are ages either 3 and 4 on the date established by the district of residence for kindergarten eligibility, or who are 5 years of age but not yet enrolled in kindergarten, and whose parents or guardian choose to enroll the child in a pre-qualified program. So there's no requirement that a child participates in pre-K services. So universal program.
So this is a question that I asked yesterday, and I think because the language, it's, when we look at it, it says the program requires all school districts to provide access.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the same as saying, I'm asking a question, even though it's not going to sound like a question, is that that doesn't seem to be the same as requiring all school districts to either provide or arrange for the provision of pre-K. Is that true?
I think that's accurate. There's nothing in the law that requires a public school district to operate a pre-K program.
Or to arrange for the provision of it,
Like
like through a private pre-K.
they have to arrange for the provision of it insofar as they are in control of the money,
Right.
and the trigger for funding is enrollment in the school district. One of the triggers is enrollment for the school district. So to the extent that they are facilitating access, I would say there is a requirement that they need to be able to facilitate the access, but there's no requirement that they partner with one specific
Right.
program or designate a pre-K program in the same way that you could designate a high school, for example.
So we know from our Act 76 testimony that there are parts of the state that don't have access to public or private pre-K. So, which is, part of when we were talking yesterday in committee and had the presentation from JFO, they were like, what are the objectives you're trying to achieve with what changes? And I know for this committee, it's universal access and actually putting somebody in charge of making sure that there is pre-K in each, however districts are going to be defined. Okay, I think that makes it somewhat clear.
There is language in statute that you can look at in one of the slides, but it sort of addresses your point, but probably not to the extent you would like it to, which is that it acknowledges that if a region of the state doesn't have sufficient pre-K, that doesn't put the requirement on the school district to create something, but that would sort of trigger a requirement for AOE and AHS, and I want to say the Building Bright Futures Advisory Council to work with public and private pre-qualified providers in the region to address the fact that there is not sufficient. So we can look at that, but I don't think it probably addresses the issue the way you'd like to see it addressed.
Yeah.
Okay, pre-qualified programs. So a school district can choose to operate its own pre-qualified pre-K program, but it's not required to do so. And a parent or guardian seeking to enroll a pre-K child in Vermont's Universal Pre-K program can choose between a private pre-qualified program or a public pre-qualified program. And that public program can either be outside the student's district of residence, or inside the student's district of residence if the district has chosen to operate a program. So the parent can choose if there is a program in the district to stay in the district, if their school district. But if their district of residence isn't offering a public program, they could go to a public program in another district if there's space, or choose a private pre-qualified provider. So there are some choices for families. If a private pre-qualified program or public pre-qualified program outside of the student's district of residence is selected by the student's parent or guardian, the school district of residence must pay the statewide pre-K tuition rate to the selected pre-qualified program. So the money is passing through the school district of residence, even if the child is going to a public program outside of the child's school district of residence or private program.
And when a child is enrolled in if the school district is paying tuition someplace, whether it's a public or a private, is that child get to be added to the average weighted daily membership?
We'll get to that.
Okay,
Yes, and it depends on how many hours they are being funded for.
okay.
So here's your question. There's insufficient pre-K programming to meet the demand in a region. There's no obligation for school district to begin or expand programming. However, the statute directs AOE, AHS, Building Bright Futures Council to collaborate with school districts, private providers in the region affected to develop a regional plan to expand capacity. So a question would be whether any of these regional plans are.
Yeah, have they happened?
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
we know that there are pre-K deserts in the state.
Yeah.
Okay, good question to ask them. All right.
And then I have a slide just to sort of pause and talk about what does pre-qualification mean, because we know that this 10 hours can only be used at pre-qualified public or private providers, and that means something very specific. So under the statute, both AHS and AOE are required to develop joint rules to govern what pre-qualification means. And in statute, there are some minimum quality standards that have to be in the rule for determining what pre-qualification is. So to be pre-qualified, the program has to either be accredited by the National Association for the Education of Young Children, or it's a program that has 4 stars from CDD's star system, or it's a program that has 3 stars with a provider plan that has been approved by both DCF and AOE to move into compliance with 4 stars.
So this is just the pre-qualification for private providers.
This is a list for both.
It's a list for both.
Yeah, and it's an or.
Okay, so school districts have to be accredited by NAEYC?
Or
Or have forced them.
pull up the statute.
Or,
I have the statute. Hang on. Want me to switch it?
well, you need the accreditation and you need 4 stars.
No,
Or-
it's
Oh.
either be accredited or be because accreditation is
Oh.
automatic.
Very
High
few.
quality.
Yeah, very few have accreditation. Pretty high bar.
You didn't say or there, that's why I was,
Yeah, that's my.
That should be an or.
language.
should be an or there,
Yeah.
Katie.
No, Katie has it correct. It's a list of 3. And so the or is only going to appear in the second to last line. So
Receipt.
they're all ors, but we don't draft and conventionally put an or after every line, right?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all words. I only put the conjunction at the last one. But here's the language now that we've
Okay.
got to death. So we have C1. This is what is supposed to be in the rules. A program of pre-K education, whether provided by a school district or private provider, shall have received NACE accreditation, 4 stars or 3 stars, and moving into compliance with a plan approved by DCF and AOE.
No, Lori did it. Sorry, I just realized I shut off the microphone during break, but Lori's on it.
I missed a couple of seconds.
Okay.
Okay, switching documents. Okay. Also, in these rules, requires a licensed provider must employ or contract for the services of at least one teacher who is licensed and endorsed in early childhood education or in early childhood special education. And that language is always language that I think we get questions about, which is that the licensed provider must employ or contract for the services, but it doesn't say must teach or provide educational instruction.
And so in a school district, it wouldn't be required for them to have a licensed teacher in the classroom?
I think some of that would depend on their contracts. If it's the school district providing it, they're gonna have collectively bargained contracts, and so there may be some provisions about licensure there. There's also a statute, and I don't know off the top of my head, but I can look at it, that requires anyone teaching in a public school to be licensed by the professional educators. I can't remember if it includes pre-K, so I will verify that. But we do get questions about this all the time, mainly in relation to the private programs.
Right. Oh, and I was familiar that the way it's worded, it didn't necessarily, doesn't even say they have to be in the building, but I guess the thing that runs through my head is, I hear in this building a lot that there are different criteria for public than there is for private. And what I'm seeing is that the criteria are the same, but there could be other influencing factors like collective bargaining agreements or.
How do I thread this needle? I think that conversation is largely about the K through 12 system, the difference between public and private regulations.
Yeah, not from the people that I talked to.
Okay. They're
that too.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I'm wondering if some of it has to do with CDD rules around like health and safety requirements. CDD has sort of particular ratios for staff to children, depending on the age of the children, and special requirements, just regarding, fire requirements specific for children of that age. And I wonder if AOE's similar rules are, more geared for an older population and not specifically targeted for the pre-K population in the same way. And I wonder if that is where some of the discrepancy is coming from. That's just a guess.
Yeah, it's mostly been brought up. Of course, there was back several years ago, there was all of that hullabaloo about that. But mostly now what I hear from other members in the building is about the professional qualifications of the people in the classroom as being the differentiating between public and private.
But as you noted, if I may, like the statute does not require this for a school either.
That's
Which
this is
we
what I'm
keep
learning,
hearing
yeah.
that, the narrative is that the schools have to have a teacher, a licensed teacher in the classroom. But the statute does not require that. If
This
they
statute
do,
doesn't, the
right,
other statute might.
right. If they do, it's not because of the
Pre-K.
pre-K statute.
Yeah.
It's for other reasons.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, the point you're
Which
trying to
is
make.
right, because there is a narrative in the building that that we set up UPK to be different between public and private,
And we didn't.
and it doesn't appear that actually is true.
I mean, who is providing care in a child care facility is also governed by CDD rules and wouldn't apply to pre-K that's being provided by a public provider in a public school. So there is a distinction there. This committee may have a chance to dive into that very deeply. There's a licensure bill for child care providers that's moving through the Senate right now. And if that ends up here, that's certainly something that really goes into what the eligibility requirements are. And I'm sure you'll hear from folks in the education field about how those requirements differ from their own requirements.
Can I ask a question about are you saying that the CDD rules are not applicable in the public school setting?
They are applicable to to programs that are regulated by CDD. So I would say pre-K education that's provided by a public school is regulated by AOE, but that's only 10 hours. So if there is a childcare program that sort of is under contract, let's say with the school district to come in and provide care
Yeah.
in a public setting, they are still regulated by CDD. So then CDD's rules would attach.
But if a school district simply provides 10 hours a week for 35 weeks a year, that program is not regulated by CBD.
I would say that's correct. Do you have a different take on it?
I don't have a different take under a plain reading of the law. I would say it depends on if a school district has contacted CDD to see if they can be licensed in order to provide childcare. Like, I don't know what the rules say, whether there's any prohibition on,
Licensing public schools.
well, the school district would be the organization running the program. I don't know if there are any examples in the field of the public school running a operating a licensed childcare program.
Sorry, I was distracted for a moment. What did you just say in that last one, Beth?
I think the reason I won't speak for Katie, I'm struggling with this question is because the pre-K statute does not require a public school that is operating a pre-K program to be licensed by CDD. And I don't know if there is a school district that operates a program that is licensed by CDD.
For pre-K. There are public schools operating CCFAP, we learned yesterday.
Yes, I have also heard that anecdotally, but I have yet to see how that operates.
Yeah, I don't really
What those-
understand exactly how it operates either.
What those agreements look like, what that regulation looks like, what's the split between the school day and the licensed childcare day. If there are folks who are actually doing it, they would be the best folks to speak to you on how that works, because the law does not provide clearly for that scenario.
Yeah, how am I supposed to how are we supposed to get this done before crossover?
Don't look at us.
I know. All I can say is I hope you have a good break, Katie. I don't know what you're doing on break, Beth, but, okay.
Okay, this last bullet is about family childcare homes. So a registered home provider who is not licensed and endorsed in early childhood education or early childhood special education shall receive regular active supervision and training from a teacher who is licensed and endorsed in early childhood education or early childhood special education. So again, that's specific to the family childcare home.
And now we get to average daily membership, weights, education funding, all the dense stuff. Actually, what we just talked about was pretty dense. Okay, so school districts under current law may include a pre-K student as one full-time equivalent pupil in their average daily membership count. Remember, the average daily membership count is what's used in the equation that ends up determining your tax rate. It is one small part of it, and it is manipulated along that equation. So pre-K kiddos are counted in their school district's ADM if they are receiving 10 or more hours in pre-K services. If they are receiving between 6 and less than 10 hours, then it's a prorated pupil. So it would be, instead of counting one kiddo, you'd be counting 0.6, let's say. And if the kiddo is receiving less than 6 hours a week, they are not counted in the ADM. And when I say receiving, it's under our UPK program. So they are receiving publicly funded pre-kindergarten education. Under current law, so we add everyone up. And then to account for the different costs associated with different parts of our education system, because theoretically, different kiddos, whether it's on the timeline of their education or based on their individual characteristics, require different needs, which may translate to different educational costs. So we apply weights to different categories, depending on those characteristics. So under current law, we have what are called grade level weights, where elementary, middle, and elementary and high school students are weighted, and also pre-K students are weighted. And pre-K students have a negative weight, negative 0.54. So you would take that total number of pre-K students, and then you would multiply that times negative 0.54, and that's the number of pre-K students that gets factored into your school budget.
So I want to make sure I understand this. So in the first bullet, it says you get to count them as one full-time equivalent, then you adjust that by minus 0.54.
Correct.
Okay. Why don't you just say they get to count as 0.46?
I am not your education finance.
Okay. All right, I just want to make sure I understood how that worked. Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ann.
And again, just to understand, I think it's clear here, but so if a school district is providing more than 10 hours, there's no difference in what that pupil is. So if they're providing 10 versus full-time, it's 0.54.
Correct, and there is a provision.
Yeah.
Yeah, minus.
I don't think we have it on one of our slides, but there is a provision in section 829, your pre-K statute, that basically requires school districts to wrap up all their pre-K costs in their school budget. So that's going to include the 10 hours a week that they are allocating, but also if they are running a program for more than 10 hours, those costs are reflected in school budgets.
Which is,
Yeah.
which is the equity issue we were trying to start to unravel in Act 76. And that work group had a hard time. Lots of things were in transition at that point in time. Because that was that's one of the things that I don't know if we're gonna be able to solve in, the work that we're trying to do now, but it's not fair for public dollars to be paying for full-time pre-K, all of us in one district, and then kids in some other district don't have access to any.
Mhm.
And that was the whole equity issue that we were trying to, we unlocked the fact that it exists,
Mhm.
but we couldn't do anything about it. And I am struggling to figure out how we would do something about it unless we required the school district to provide or arrange for the provision of pre-K.
Universal means something very different district to district.
Yeah,
It can
yeah.
either be 0, it could be 10 hours, or it could be 40 hours,
Yeah.
or anywhere in
Right.
between.
Yeah.
Or 0 kids and 3 kids and 15 kids.
Yeah.
Or 200.
Right.
Yes, universal for access, but it's not universally the same benefit.
But it's not even universal for access.
Well, in theory.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
It doesn't mean it's happening, but in theory.
The state will pay for it if you can, state will pay
Yeah.
for it if you can find it.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Oh.
I just mentioned one thing about Act 73.
Yeah.
Act 73 keeps the pre-K weight. But then it does away with the grade level weights for everything else. So no longer under the foundation formula that Act 73 has contingently established would a high school student receive any extra weight. Act 73 retains the pre-K weight as is, but then there's some legislative intent there about establishing an appropriate weight, which do with that what you may.
During this session, right?
In this
So
session,
we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
who's supposed to do that? The
Well,
legislature.
Ways and Means has been looking at that.
Yeah.
There is some discussion about whether to have just a flat amount. I can't remember the term. that was-
Categorical aid.
Thank you, categorical aid. there's lots of discussion happening between committees about, for me, if pre-K is education, if it's offered in a public school and if it's, there is, well, you heard yesterday, the chair of the Committee on Education, just wanted to separate out, so you get education funding if it's in the school, but you don't get education funding even if you're licensed and offering the same service. If it's in private, that would be under, CCFAP, which we know is in a deficit situation at this point in time because it's oversubscribed, to say, I guess, if you will. So there's, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm gonna quit.
Yes.
It's really hard things to do.
Overwhelmed.
I know. Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
So the term categorical aid sounds familiar in the sense, is that what we use for special ed?
Yeah, so it's all of those off JFO, if you're watching. They don't like it when we use this term, but it's off the top of the ed fund. So it's school meals, it's transportation reimbursement, it's special education. It's all of those things that are not, that come off the top of the ed fund, yes.
And a pre-K student would have additional weight attached to them if they were a child with a disability,
Yes.
the income.
Under our, yes,
Correct. Yeah.
yes. If you move to categorical aid, you're not applying weights to categorical aid. That, I don't know how you figure, that is a policy, like that would have to be, well, it would be a policy choice on whether or not you want to factor those differentiations into how the categorical aid
Category
is
is calculated, yeah.
A question regarding Act 73 and what we have to do in this field, because we talked about it as, and there was a slide in the presentation we had yesterday, intent, and maybe this is me just not yet understanding those parts of the bills. So what do we have to do? The intent language includes establishing an appropriate weight, again, whatever that means. But what do we have to do?
It depends on what your policy objectives are. The intent language is not binding language. It is aspirational. So it does not require anything. If your goal is to make everything work that's in Act 73, I think pre-K is an outstanding policy question of how it is captured in the foundation formula and any policy choices that would need to go along with that. A little bit of a chicken or the egg situation, whether you make the programmatic policy choices or the funding choice, but related to pre-K and the weight, it's just aspirational language.
Did we make any specific policy choices in Act 73 related to pre-K?
Other than that intent language and keeping the weight the same, no.
There's a TBD.
We're done with pre-K.
Yeah.
That was funny. That was, he's just so humorous.
Okay, the statute permits a private provider to receive additional payment directly from a parent or guardian, only for pre-K education in excess of the hours paid for by the district or for childcare services. And a private provider is not bound by the statewide rate when determining the rates it will charge for a parent or guardian for additional pre-K services.
So there's another piece of inequity. So private providers can charge for pre-K in excess of the 10 hours. If you're getting more than 10 hours of pre-K in a public school, the taxpayers are all paying for it. Another inequity. Yeah.
So when this was first set up, then it was trying to answer a lot of questions. It seems to me that, and it didn't succeed entirely in providing universal access for Vermont kids. And so what I'm hearing, and not just today, but in everything, is that the big question is the state going to get behind providing pre-K for every child, or just a mechanism by which that child's education can be paid for. And then, well, if we're going to choose the mechanism for a piece, how are we going to do that? And right now we've set up so they can do it publicly or privately, but strikes me there are lots of problems with that, with private and public.
Well, you'll learn more from witnesses about how that's considered best practice in the country.
I understand.
But it complicates it.
Yeah.
It complicates it tremendously. And when with stuff like this, complicates it as well, because, you know, we have some parents who are getting access to, let's just say 30 or 35 hours of pre-K at no cost other than paying their taxes. And then other folks who are paying those same taxes for that education
Right.
and then are being charged extra
Yeah,
if they're getting extra pre-K at a private provider.
exactly. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it strikes me that, when you say, what's best practice, I get that. There are a lot of many other kinds of scenarios you could
Yeah.
point to where best practice is what we're after, but we can't afford that. We can't even pretend that we can.
Well, it might not even be practical. honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
So it seems like,
But
yeah,
we have to also be cognizant of the fact that we have a lot of private pre-K out there.
Yes.
60%, it's something like that, of our kids
yeah,
are getting their pre-K in the private setting. And it is also sustaining those private businesses as well.
absolutely.
So it's,
Yes. No,
The reason I ask about what's required of us in Act 73 and on this global sort of meta policy issue is what are we trying to achieve? And this is a question I have that I'll raise in the licensure issue is what are we trying to achieve? And if it's kindergarten readiness, Vermont is doing fairly well in that
yeah.
question. So what sort of change and upheaval do we want to create for a system that's achieving 85% kindergarten readiness, which I think ranks well nationally?
we're doing very well on kindergarten readiness. It's kind of after kindergarten where things kind of like fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly, I think one of the things that, we need to talk about as committee is kind of like outlining what are we trying to achieve with any particular change?
Yeah.
Certainly, school readiness is one of the things that, would be at the top of the list, but,
We're
you know.
already doing well there, so.
Well, we're doing well, and so then we gotta be careful about how we upset the apple cart.
Well, and that's what I was kind of thinking about.
That's
That our policy choices here will have, no matter what lever we pull, it's gonna have an impact somewhere else. So that balancing that, and I think that might be kind of part of your kind of getting overwhelmed with the amount of time we have is really considering, how our policy choices might destabilize a system that is producing outcomes in certain areas. I think equity and equitable access has always been, for years, has been an issue in at least for us.
That would be one of my
Right,
next
that's
things on
one
the
of like
list.
the next
Is it
things, right?
just to get statewide access?
Yes,
Yeah.
but again, that statewide access, by creating it, are we risking destabilizing? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I think that's like the big question. And kind of prioritizing, like when Doug was talking about like, what are we trying, in Act 73, what do we have to do? And then thinking about, can we just chunk out like, okay, if these are our priorities or things that we in a perfect world would want to fix about the system, can we take like one of those and address them in the time that we have?
That's what I would like that.
Right, because we're not gonna have time to really, but we have to kind of come to agreement as to what that priority is that we're going to work on. Is it gonna be access? Is it gonna be, the weights, the number? Is it gonna be,
Yeah, I don't think we need to worry about the weights as much. But I do think that, when I listen to other people in the education committee, I hear one of their goals is to remove costs from the ed fund. And, uh, you know, I guess at what cost? Because then that becomes the destabilizer
Stabilizing for the
for
private.
well, not just the private, for the kids, because that's the outcome that we're achieving is a high rate of kindergarten readiness. And if you remove that funding source, then we reduce kindergarten readiness. And so that doesn't seem to be a logical thing if we're thinking about the kids and that being sort of the ultimate
Yeah.
readiness.
For me, really, the point that you emphasized when we were on slide 4 of the presentation about whether AOE, AHS, and BBF, are working on developing regional plans. What does that look like? I would love to hear testimony on that, because that seems like an area where we have an opportunity of raising even higher our kindergarten readiness if we can get services into communities and parts of the
They don't
state
have
where
it right
that
now.
don't have it.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, upset the apple cart, pressing a balloon, and other things happen, whatever metaphor we want to use, we've got to be very careful on that. And shifting, even if we're not deciding weights here, how the payments are made out into the system, I think we do want to keep an eye on, because we don't want that current mixed delivery system that we have. It's a delicate balance what we have right now. But it seems to be working, at least from the measure of kindergarten readiness.
I also wonder if, as far as equitable access goes, I wonder if, given our limited time, if we can think of creative ways of making progress in that area, right? Because, just like anything in this building, I think things take time. And if we can come up with an elegant plan to maybe formalize some of it, and I don't know the details of what these 3 entities do right now. I think that's for us to find out, but maybe amp that up a bit and get better information and data on what is actually happening on ensuring equitable access across the state. And what are the steps that can be taken to improve that rather than solving it?
Yeah, well, and we heard yesterday that AOE doesn't actually have
Have
data
data.
on what school districts provide what for how long, and whether it's in the building or not in the building. And
And I'll also note that
that may be the only progress we're able to make is requiring
heard-
data. I don't know.
well, we heard in testimony that BBF has a grant that will help with that. And I was told that that is not true,
Yeah,
that the grant that they have
yeah.
isn't.
JFO said that yesterday.
Yeah, so
That's not what their
it's
purpose
not,
of the grant.
that's not, no, it's not solving the data issue. It might make some marginal progress there, but it's not solving the data issue.
Okay. So then we have this last, it goes from the current system is the ed fund going to both the pre-qualified public and pre-qualified private. All right, so I think, so we're not taking any other witnesses on this particular issue before break, but we'll be spending some intensive time on this when we get back. And we had invited AOE this week, but they declined. They want to come after the break. And I do have some upcoming meetings with the speaker and the chairs of education and ways and means to right now I feels like we got sort of 3 different things even potentially happening, and that is going to drive people at the end of the table. That's not going to be good for them. And it won't be good for us, because then we'll be trying, we'll be working at cross purposes. So it feels like we need to come up with, what is the overall goal? And the 3 committees need to agree on what that overall goal is. And then we can work at how we figure out our part in helping to achieve that. Which I don't think will be that easy. And that I'm not sure what form this is going to take. I'm not sure if we're going to send a memo to education and Ways and Means and saying, this is, you know, where we're headed in terms of the goal that we were trying to achieve and how we think we should go about it, or whether we're going to be actually asking for language in some sort of committee bill that then they will add on to. At the beginning of the session, the speaker was looking for a separate bill on pre-K. I don't know if that's still, I've heard different things about that. So now I'm not sure if that's the case or not. So I guess from our perspective, it'd be easier for us to kind of like take testimony, give our feedback, and let other people develop language.
This isn't my area, so.
Yeah.
It's not me.
For the week after, that there was an expression that a former speaker used, and wondering if it would apply here for members. It's called "Bring Your Jammies."
Oh, yeah. We will definitely be having long days on the week after. So, yeah, thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be starting earlier and ending later. And we will be coming back after floor. So that's just to be prepared for that. Because we have three big topics that we have to move on. So, okay, Beth, any other questions for Beth? All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was very helpful.
I sent mine to the superintendent to help me. I'm not an educator.
Okay, folks, so, after lunch, we are going to be taking a look at the latest version of the homelessness bill. We're also going to be reviewing with Katie, H545. The Senate has passed H545 now. That's the bill that's reported on around immunizations. I don't think there are any big changes on that, but it didn't appear in the notice calendar, which I'm kind of surprised about. But Zon, I think you should be prepared to give our committees report back on the Senate changes. It'll probably be on Friday, but it could be as early as tomorrow, depending upon how I haven't checked the calendar, just like momentarily. It may have appeared. It hadn't been sent over from the Senate yet,
So the process is we'll hear about it today and then we'll vote again whether or not we are willing to accept it as it stands.
Yes.
And if we, or whether to go to.
concur or not concur.
And then.
Yeah.
Conference.
No, they didn't change a lot.
They didn't really, they just reordered some things mostly.
Yeah.
The one section I don't get about deleting, but I'll have to
Yeah.
talk about that.
So we're going to hear from Katie about that this afternoon. And so then be prepared to take a vote on that this afternoon. So that when it does appear on the calendar, Zon will be able to stand up and give our vote about whether we're concurring or not. And we also, Zon, as part of that process, you give a brief explanation of what changed in the Senate version and then our vote. Okay, so I'll see y'all after lunch.
And help me.